Hello and welcome to Lucky the Story next episode. Today we have an amazing speaker, Jim, who's been in the community service since 1980s. And I'm so thrilled and I'm so excited to have him on our show and share his journey about his community service. And I'm very careful when I say community service because this is not a political platform to share their opinions and views and what they have achieved, but most importantly, what they have contributed to the society and how they have made a difference in the society. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Jim.
Thanks, Lucky.
I every time when I finish my episode, I try to go back and ask my kids, what do you think we should have as the next episode? And on a dining table, my 14-year-old said that we just passed through an election season. And what if you bring someone who actually provides some insight about how this election process works and how this individual contributes to the society, to the community? And my younger one said, yes, I also want to know what is this electoral votes? And because he catched through the news in past few months. So, you know, what I would like to understand through this podcast episode is that how does this election process works at a state level, at a city level, and at the federal level, right? And when I was thinking through this, your name came to me as the very first one, and for two reasons. And I don't think I have ever told you this, but I've been involved in the community service, and I have been in touch with you for past almost 2 years now.
Yeah, 2 years.
And
Yeah.
you have come across as one person that you're very positive, very approaching, and you never made me feel uncomfortable as an outsider when I was trying my hands into this
Well, thank you.
community service. And I
Yeah,
really mean it from my
thank you.
heart. And when I approached you that, because you have, and I'll let you speak about what you do, but I think from outsider, when I know you're more like your main area of expertise is campaign manager, right? For campaigning in certain space. But
Both.
both.
As a candidate, campaign manager,
Campaign-
I've done both.
Yeah. So in this episode, I would like to unfold what is the life like this for a campaign manager, and what is it like to get involved into the community service and being in the board or commissions or whatnot at the town level and at the state level.
All right.
So I'll let you introduce yourself. You have a lot to speak.
No. Well, thank you for the compliment, by the way,
Sure.
about 2 years. But my name is Jim Feehan. I'm a retired fire lieutenant. I've been, well, let's see, in firefighting since 1981. I'm a third generation fireman. I retired, I think it was in 2014, as a lieutenant from the Stanford Fire Department. And during my time as a fireman, I got involved in my local community. I always felt it was right to give back to the community and be involved, because you want to care about the things, you want to care about your community. So I started in politics at the ground level, and where I'm currently at today, where I'm a member of the Shelton Board of Education.
Good. And thank you for that introduction. What I really want to start with as my first question, and I think this is a question that came from my 14-year-old son on a dining table when I asked what kind of question I should ask. The first question he asked me, can you ask what is the difference between politics and a community service? So I want to hear from you. How do you see, is there a difference, or is it an integral part of each other where you have to be in the political space
No.
while you do the community service, or vice versa?
I think community service and politics are intertwined depending on what you're doing. Community service could be volunteering at your local YMCA. Community service could be Boy Scouts of America. Community service can be just serving on a commission and not being political, being apolitical. I think politics is more of what drives people when they're running for office, and the nuances of one getting elected, after you're elected as well. What do you do while you're there? The party system we have in America of, right now, we're mainly two dominant parties with a lot of other smaller parties. That's kind of the political end. I think public service, quite honestly, there's paid like I was. I was also a volunteer fireman for 7 years. So that was public service without any politics. And then I became a professional fireman, which I was paid for that service. But that, again, was still public service. I think more politics and public service get intertwined when you're running for office, elections.
I see. So, when so you have worked in both space, right? Once on the campaign side when you're actually working with the party electmen or whatnot, and you're also worked on the inside where you have been the with the member of that particular commission and whatnot. I want to start with how what attracts you, or how do you define a campaign manager, and when you are actually trying to so let's say if I'm running for let's say a state legislator or something, right? I
State
must
rep,
have
yeah.
state rep, right?
Yeah.
So I must have a campaign manager. Is
You
that
don't have to.
you don't have to?
You can. I've seen candidates manage their own campaigns. The only
Okay.
problem when you start talking about your first step of elections, usually like when I first started, I could remember. Matter of fact, I just happened to meet up with him the other night. It was a good friend of mine, John Harkins. I started working with him, and you start really on the lowly age. You just don't jump in and be a campaign manager because there's so many facets, whether it be electronic today. When I first started, there wasn't much electronic, so I'm dating myself. But mailers, signs, walking, volunteers. But you should start, at a lower level. But being a campaign manager is is an extremely difficult task because you are really hurting cats at times. You're dealing with many different problems. But some candidates running for state office or local office, or even I've never seen it at federal level, but they'll be their own campaign manager. You can do that as a state
You
rep.
can.
Oh
You
yeah.
can.
Yeah. There's no requirement you have to have a campaign
I
manager.
see.
But it kind of falls to, like they say with lawyers, a person on trial who has themselves as an attorney as a fool for a client.
Of course. Yes.
And in
I've
this
heard that.
case, yeah. So you don't want to be your own campaign manager because you see yourself you see yourself how you see yourself. But there is the reality of how others see you.
Right.
And a campaign manager hopefully can manage that, if you would.
Right. So, I
Different
wanna,
view.
Of course, for our viewers, I want to use this time to understand. So let's say if I'm running for a state rep, right? I
Yep.
come to you and say, Jim, based on your academics and what you have achieved in this, I would like you to onboard and work with me on this. Can you walk me through what that process looks like from start to end? And the second part, which I would like to also understand, that in this space where you are, there's never always going to be a success. There's going to be defeat. There's going to be a success, right? It's never always the win-win.
There's never a
There
number
never.
two.
Number two, right? So how do you handle, and does that push you back? Like, okay, I was not able to give, and we didn't succeed for various reasons. How do you handle that, and how do you stand up yourself and say, okay, next time I'm ready and I'm going to do even better?
It's tough. It's tough when you lose an election. I had one, for example, where the votes got miscounted, and we went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And it's difficult. It's very difficult when you lose. It's hard. It's a lot of soul searching. But your first part of the question was, where does this all start? Well, as I said, you don't start out as a campaign manager. You got to learn the ropes. So, are we talking more about candidate or campaign manager?
Campaign manager. I
All
want
right,
to
stay
start with
camp-
the campaign because
Okay.
I'm more interested in that, and then the second part will go on the
Candidate.
Yeah.
As a campaign manager, you're looking for somebody that's very well qualified. For example, a good friend of mine is Chris Silhavy. Extremely great campaign manager, has served in elected office. He is a fantastic person to have on your staff. He understands the nuances. And there's little things. As a campaign manager, everything falls on you. And the start begins either you're, as a campaign manager, you're looking for a candidate, or a candidate searches you out. And generally, I think in political circles, you have to have, if the candidate's looking out, you got to have a rapport with each other. You can't be a campaign manager where you're at war with the candidate. It just doesn't serve any purpose.
yeah.
It's like an encampment fighting among itself. So a lot of times what will happen is you will decide to run, Lucky decides to run for office. So you put in your paperwork, and your first step, everybody says, who's going to be your campaign manager? And a second position too, What you must have, this is the one you must have in the state of Connecticut, is a treasurer. And
That's the law.
that's the law, because you have to have somebody that handles your finances. I'm not sure if you could also be your own treasurer. I wouldn't advise it.
And do you have to pay for those, or those are all services that they are offered because they want to serve?
Some do it at gratis. I had a wonderful lady out of Trumbull when I was running for state rep, who helped and was my treasurer, but I did pay her to do that job because it's very cumbersome. You have to log all the donations. You have to file all the state reports. You have to file paperwork after paperwork. You got to meet certain deadlines, and you got to meet certain criteria. So that's another important position that you could just talk about days. But going back, usually the candidate's got to find a campaign manager they're comfortable
Come
with.
to me. And what is that once you're onboarded, then what? Like how does that, and maybe you could pick any example if it's a state rep that you're working with or it's a local town.
And
But
they're the same.
It's the same?
Just they're basically the same, but as you get bigger, the scope and requirements get bigger.
Gets bigger.
Yes, sir. You're looking at a lot of times, like if you go for, a statewide office, that's a large campaign with a lot of donations. The governor, to be part of the CE program, the public funding, has to raise $250,000. Everybody who donates has to fill out that sheet. You've got to watch them all. You've got to file properly, make sure they're filled out right. So the next step is, let's say Lucky finds a campaign manager that you feel comfortable with. Now you have to start to chart your course. And that
Start your what?
chart your course.
Church. Okay.
Well, nobody's just going to say, hey, we're taking you. You have to go and get party endorsements. Now,
So this is before. So before you go to the party's endorsement, you have to have a treasurer and
You should.
You should.
Should.
And then campaign manager. So at least
you can do a campaign manager after you decide.
Okay.
You have to announce you're running,
Okay.
and then you also have to file your paperwork.
But when you announce, you don't have to get a ticket from a party.
No.
You can still announce. So I can
As an
go
independent.
as an independent. But then in this process, the X party versus Y may say, I would rather have you into mine. Depending on my ideology, I can associate them, and they can support you.
Generally,
Is that generally how
you're
it
either
works?
registered as a Republican or a Democrat
course, yeah.
in our two-party system. And what happens is that party has to select you. So part of charting your course is months in advance. You just don't decide a week before the election, I'm going to run. Let's say it's a local councilman.
Okay.
They'll start right now. We had our last election in November. By January, I was at a meeting up at an RTC, Republican Town Committee, this week, and they've already announced anyone interested in running, anyone that currently holds a position, let us know that you're interested in rerunning. And let's say the current councilman decides not to run, they have to start to find somebody. So some people like yourself might come forward, and then they'll start to talk to you and kind of vet you out. Is this the type of person that we want to be part of our party
Got it.
and represent us in the public? And let's say you're a great citizen, good family, people know you, at least from both Democrat and Republican. They'll say, okay, we'd like you to consider running for the position. You announce that you're running, and then you start to put your team together.
I see. And that's when the campaign manager will help you slice and dice the strategies, right?
Well, your first biggest is you have to begin fundraising. You should any advice for anybody running for political office, start fundraising from the day after you announce. You can't legally do it beforehand, but the day after you announce, start raise and file your paperwork.
File the paperwork.
File your proper paperwork.
Okay.
You don't ever want to get in trouble with the state. They're very tough to work with in the first place, but they're by the rules. If you
And
follow
does the party helps you navigate
Oh,
through
yes.
with this process?
Oh,
Okay.
yes. That's the
Okay.
benefit of being a party.
Right.
We help
Right.
people get elected with like mind.
Okay.
So then your next step from there is after you've got, that you don't have the endorsement yet because you have to go to a convention, but now you're raising money and also trying to get people who are going to be going to that party convention to endorse you and vote for you.
Okay.
And they say it's local, just a local race. Still, there's a party meeting, which I think you've been to one.
Yes.
And then there may be 2 or 3 other people interested in that position. So you have to show everyone why you want the position, and having a team in place and raising good money shows that people agree with you and they want to get to know you. Then you go to your party convention and hopefully you receive the nomination, And you then either after that you get go into a primary if somebody else wants it, provided they either have enough signatures, or let's say, for example, you go to this convention and it's me versus you, and it's local, it's in your town, and you get 6, there's 10 people voting for the position. You get 6, I get 4. I have enough to primary. So all I have to do is file the form with the state. I can primary you, even though you have the party endorsement. That means the party selected you.
Okay.
I have the right to appeal that decision through a primary.
Wow.
So then what a primary is what you see, a lot of people see in August, a couple signs are up, you vote today. It's people, 2 people, 3 people 4 people want the position, and then the party, members of the party go pick everyone in the community, say all the Republicans in Shelton, where we live, will pick the person they want. And then that person goes on to the general election.
I see. And when you touched on the fundraising, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a limitation that is set up by the party, that you must raise this much in order for you? Or how does that fundraising limitation start? Like, what is that number that should consider as a number that makes it like, okay, I made it through this fundraising?
Well, there's no limitation.
Okay.
Unless you're doing this, you're running for state office and you're part of the CE program, the Citizens Election Program. That will limit how much you can raise. And you raise a certain amount, both in donation and in signature, $5 signatures to qualify, and they'll give you funds from the state program. That way the elections are kept even, and someone who has, bazillions of dollars, but you don't have to take that program. You can elect to use your own money.
I see.
But most people don't. Now, in a local election, there's no state funding. So what you have to do is raise your own money, and there's no cap.
There's no cap.
No, sir. Matter of fact, the more money you have, the better your campaign.
But how do you, what seems to be like, okay, this is my thing, I made it, and I feel like I am there. Like what is that looks like when you look in the past? Like what candidates have done that makes it looks like that number seems to be in a good shape and good, like, you understand, right, where I'm coming from?
I do. What I've seen, at least in my experience, is you'll have people that raise no money and just don't care. Just putting their name in.
Just because they want to be out there and they want their name to be there. Okay.
And then you'll have people that will raise a little bit of money who don't understand it. And that's where the party comes in. And guys like myself who try, when you say you have a candidate running for mayor, you got to raise a lot of money. In a typical city, depending on the size, could be on a low city, could be, 15,000 to cities where you're raising $1 to $2 million or more for the campaign. It really depends on the size of the town or city and also the candidate. The candidate has to be a self-starter, have the fire in the belly, and has to be the person that is there isn't anybody that comes up and says, hey, I'll take care of all the fundraising for you. That's not the way it happens. There are people that help you, like myself and others that are involved in the party. The party does help. That's why most people succeed in the two-party system, is because we have a lot of people that want to make sure, in our case, and the Democrats as well. I'm a Republican, by the way.
Okay.
Both parties, and even independents, Green Party, they have people in their party that want to raise funds to, push their type of ideology and what they think how government should be run. So dollar-wise, it depends on the position and the person. At the end of the day, the more the better, because the better you can get out your message.
I see. So what kind of a help and support you as a campaign manager do to make that fund go a little further? Like, what do you do that helps that individual strategize? Like, I want to touch on that a little strategic part. Like, what are some of the things? Is just the funding, or is it like you look at the map and you say, okay, this is the area you need to focus? Like, you have to do the study of that individual? Like, how does that process work?
When I first started, the RNC gave us books there was 3 books about 3 inches binders. There are so many different things. You have to do a candidate assessment. What are your strengths? What are your minuses? You have to understand your district. You may do polling. And part of understanding your district, you want to understand what are the key issues in your district and where do you stand? Because your stance, not telling you ever to change your viewpoint, because that's not a person who started with me in politics a number of years ago was a great campaign manager for me. And he said, listen, I'm only going to ask one thing from you if you get elected. I said, what's that? And he said, just have good government. Be a good leader. That's all I ask. I never let that go. Just be a good leader and want good government. Part of that is, and where I'm going with this is, don't sell yourself out. You know, if take a really abrasive subject for a lot of people, maybe, for example, right to life, a woman's right to choose. Don't try to change every person you meet and say to one person, I'm for it, then the next person, I'm not. Pick who you are and stick to your gun.
Stick to your ideology.
Yes,
and
sir.
Make sure that you are genuine. I think
Yes.
that's the genuinity would come
Yes.
out. Because sometimes people take a shortcut and they want to just get their votes and they would say what they want to hear.
And that's the worst thing you can do.
Do you think that even after so many years after years, people still make that mistake?
Every day. We just saw it in the presidential election. You saw where, one candidate, and, keeping politics out of the room, one candidate in particular would change to the audience where they were at. And you had the other candidate, who a lot of people don't like, but never changed who they were, even though sometimes it could be abrasive. I say always be genuine to yourself, because in the morning, who you have to shave is yourself. Nobody else shaves you unless you go to a barber, and they don't do it that often anymore. You have got to be the person that I'll give you an example. I was a young councilman, and I was helping a woman cut a tree. It was overgrown her yard, lifting her sidewalk, and she said to me, Mr. Feehan, I don't really always agree with you. I said, okay. And she goes, but I do appreciate, I've watched you on the council, because they had taping then. She said, but you're consistent and you don't flip-flop. And I feel a lot better talking to you, even though I don't agree with everything you do, but at least you're not flip-flopping. When you're a flip-flopper in politics, people pick up on that.
People are smart.
The voter is so intelligent.
What I feel that, and I'm learning this a little late in my life, that we think that I think that I'm smart, but there is somebody always smarter than you.
Always.
The other person is all, because he and she always have the same knowledge available to their disposal that I have. And people perceive sometimes things differently or whatnot, but I think everybody's smart in today's world. And
I was a blunt instrument. I was a fireman. We just get to put wet stuff on the red stuff,
Right.
But I've learned a lot from smarter people. And I've sat in rooms with politicals, people that when they come out with their opinion of where we should be and what we should be doing. I worked on a gubernatorial campaign. And there were people...
I'm sorry. I wanna use that.
Sure.
Just use the word. What was it?
Gubernatorial.
And excuse me, because I'm only 25 years old technically, because I came to this country, right? So there are norms and terms that I'm still trying to acclimate, and I know that name. I've heard that many times, but I want because this episode is all about youngsters, and as much as I like to believe, there is still a lot of lack of knowledge when it comes to civics.
Ton. My own daughter just asked me the other day.
Yeah. So can you explain what that means?
Governor's race.
Okay.
That's all it is.
So why do they not call it a governor?
They do. It's just a term for another term for governor race.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Don't worry about it. But you take a look at, people. You've got to be sincere, because the voter can tell if you're false. They really can. I ran my first election when I was a young councilman, and I actually ran against another fireman, and he was a fantastic person. I actually hated winning the election. He was he was a great man. Tony Ross was his name. And unfortunately, I ran, he ran, and both of us were very genuine on our campaigns going out. And luckily I won at the time, but he was just an outstanding individual. But the one thing I always remember about, he was very genuine. To the point where he didn't care. He was never moving up in politics. And what he told me, I just want what's best for the town. And he turned out to be even though we were opposite parties, he turned out to be one of my best people to help me when I was a councilman.
Wow.
Yeah, great guy. He's passed away now, but a really fantastic person.
So when people say dirty politics, that's not true statement all the time. People are always like...
Not all the time, but...
Not all the time.
But I'm going to tell you, it's there.
Is there?
I've suffered it personally.
Oh, really?
At great cost.
Anything you would like to share?
No, I'll keep it in the past, but even for some party of your own party, let me tell you, dirty politics is out there. I'm going to tell you that there's people that are not in this for the right reason. They are going to, sometimes people are going to lie. They're going to cheat. They're going to do things that are unethical. And again, I go back to shaving yourself. At the end of the day, I have to be able to come home and look my wife and kids and say, I did everything ethically that I thought was right. It doesn't mean, now you and I can fight. And when I was a council chairman, I said, look, I would fight hard with people. I mean, on an issue. I mean, we could roll around on the floor, for God's sakes. But I never made it personal. Afterwards, most people didn't know this. We would fight on the floor. They would think we were venomous enemies, that we hated each other. You know, we were arguing our arguments quite strong. Afterwards, we'd go and have a beer.
So how do you untangle that?
Easy.
Like how do you make that? Because
Don't make it personal.
but it's very easy to say.
It's very easy, but it's harder to practice. And you know what? You start to believe that you're not better than anyone else. Remember we talk about smarter people? I'm not better than anybody else. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I'm no better than anybody. And when you get that attitude and you get at a federal level and you think you're all powerful, all knowing, or a state level or even local, and you think you're better than the person that voted you in office, you should be leaving office, because you're voted in office to serve. You're not there to attack people. You're there to fight for your ideals. And if they're really, really wrong on an ideal, you know, like for example, we have this, immigration issue, something you can relate to. There's people on both sides of the aisle, but we don't have to attack and destroy each other. We can find answers together. We just have to be willing to talk, like we are right now.
We are talking. Yeah. That's true. So coming back to the, let's say election is over, I won the race, and then what happens? Because now you
Party.
are not,
Yeah, I gotta have a
that's
party.
the party. That's it.
You gotta have a party.
Until the next time. Until the next. How do you manage that time when you are not actually campaigning, like when you're not strategizing things? Because
On what
the election
position?
for, like state rep, for an example.
Well, if you're elected a state rep, right away, so you'll get elected, the next day or within a couple days, and you've been elected, unless it's a recount like we've seen up in Torrington. What happens is that you've got to go meet with your caucus, and you have to elect leadership, and you're new.
And what is, for the audience again? Sorry, caucus, please.
Caucus is a legal thing. We have rules about that you can't meet in the back room. So say if you're opposite parties, I can't meet with the opposite party and make deals in the back room so the public doesn't see it.
So it's like everything is a public domain, technically.
Well, there's a public meetings you got to have, but members of the same political affiliation at the same, so say you're on a board of ed. I'm legally allowed to meet with members that are on the board of ed that are Republicans in private.
Okay.
So we can discuss and strategize. But if there was a Democrat there or an independent who was on the board of ed, that's an illegal meeting.
Oh.
Because we got to do the people's business, we call it, in public. You have to see, many years ago, everything was done in the back room when we talked things were bad. And they would come out, cast a vote, no discussion, and all the deals were made. And the people looked and said, what the heck? How did this happen? And something bad would happen. And everybody would say, they took a vote, and there was no discussion. So now you do get to talk among your group so that you can figure out, all right, what is our position on this as a group?
And that's what's called caucus.
That's a caucus.
Okay.
Among members of your same party.
Parties. Okay. Sorry, go on to the point. I didn't mean to derail you.
Oh, don't worry. No, you hit me as you go.
Yeah.
So after your election, you've got to go, if you're a state rep or even local, say, we'll stay with local, and you're a councilman or alderman, you've got to meet with your other aldermen, like in our town, you got to select a president and a vice president to run the meetings.
Okay.
The mayor is already in an established position, and then you'll pick someone to lead you. And then you might talk in that caucus, what do we want to accomplish in this session? What's some issues that are left over? What are things that we don't want to do? And you discuss that, and you try to formulate a game plan, because most terms in office are 2 to 4 years.
Okay.
So you want to kind of formulate your leadership and what's your goals.
Okay.
And that's what you do after you're elected.
So
And then you start having your meetings and do the people's business.
okay, so you still your job doesn't end after the fact when you're elected.
No.
So it continues.
That's where it begins.
It begins. And it continues until the next time when you're running again
And you're in office
and you're in the office.
and you run again.
So
and
you're
it-
basically like a chief of staff, technically.
no,
would you say?
I'm talking candidate. now.
Candidates.
Candidate.
Okay, sorry.
Campaign manager, the day after election, shake hands and congratulations, and he's off. He's free.
That's it. And
That's
you don't
it.
get paid for this, right?
No, I'm local. No, even I worked on, for example, our state senator in our district worked on his campaign for a number of years. I think once we got to pay for a small amount,
Okay.
but generally, as a campaign, a party worker, and someone that believes in the party, we volunteer our time to move our people forward, and it's not a lot of funding. I'll tell it to all the kids or whoever's listening. Not many people make a lot of money in politics. It's cost me so much more money than you'll ever make. You don't get into this for the money. Don't do that.
What do you get in for?
I wa-
So I will tell you mine. Why I want to be in this space. This country has given me so much that I
Yeah.
cannot thank enough. And being in this country for 25 years, I feel like whatever I have, if I can give a little bit back to the community by serving, I think it's my way of thanking.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how much I do, it's not going to be enough. Because the amount of things that I receive from this country, a beautiful life, everything I could ask for.
Yep.
So
Safety, security.
So sense of gratification comes when I do what I do. I have not even scratched the surface, to be honest with you. I'm trying to find my niche and trying to see how best I can help and support, because like you've been a campaign manager. That's your way of supporting. There are people who wants to be in the commission they are supporting, right?
Mhm.
I am currently in the commissions, as you know, I'm a vice chair for a
Fair rent.
fair renting commission.
Yes. Very important
I
committee.
think I cannot thank a committee and a party who has helped me put in that spot. Thanks to John Anglis. I treat him as a mentor.
There's a great public servant right there. For the people that don't know, John is what, 92?
92.
92 now? Yep. He's been serving as an alderman in Shelton for years. He's a Korean veteran, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He's just a fantastic man who gives so much. You should have him on the show.
I am actually.
Oh,
I
yeah?
spoke
Yeah.
to him. He is if I look at myself and whatever I am able to, knowing you, I think I give a credit to him.
Yeah.
Everything, he was the first person, and I want to hold on to that story, how I got in touch with him, because for the episode, but I will share this. I don't know if I ever told you this offline, that when I was
You
looking,
did.
I did?
You did.
I did, right?
Yes, sir.
So for the sake of audience, I'll share this. So I asked him, I was so hungry that I said, can you give me something? One day he called me, he said, meet me at the Riverdale diner.
Yes, sir.
And I met him and he gave me this little book. He said, this is a fair renting commission that we want to introduce to the town. Just read through this and try to come up with a plan. And I had no idea, but I
think he was giving you a test.
yes.
See what you would do.
Yeah. And I pretended like I can do this and that. But I go home, I was trying to figure out things. Wasn't easy, but I navigate through. He helped me. He knew that I don't know, but behind the scene, he was trying to help me. We met a couple of times. So we worked through this process and we introduced the Fair Renting Commission with his blessing and others, seniors on the party. And then, I asked him, I said, John, can I be the president for this commission? Because I don't know anything about how things work. He said, it doesn't work that way. Whoever is on the board will have to vote you. That was a lesson I learned very first day.
I make a bet the second one is he said, and you better get a book called Robert's Rules of Order.
Exactly. So I asked him, what is the Robert's Rule? And he said, he told me two things. He said Robert's Rule and he said charter.
Charter.
So, and
Charter is really in depth for that commission, I think.
yeah, but he
But
said,
Robert's Rules of Order, you got to know.
so I said, I don't have it. He said, well, you can buy this, you can get here and there. But the following meeting I met him, he shared with me the charter, the original charter.
Yes.
He brought it. And he also gave me the glimpse of the Robert's Rule. For the audience who don't know what Robert's Rules, can you give a little
Yeah.
background to the Robert's Rule, please?
Robert's Rules is just a how you should conduct a meeting. How
Any government meeting or any public meetings.
any public. There's also Mason's Rules of Order as well. I think the State House uses.
Okay.
But Robert's Rules of Order are the precedent of how motions are made, how you vote on things. And remember what we were talking about earlier about not making it personal? Robert's Rules conducts the meeting, and the way it's done, just a simple thing to give you an example. If there's 10 people on the board, I don't address you directly, even though I am. You say, through the chair to Mr. Singh, meaning that I'm speaking through the chair. So the chair of that board or commission has the ability to shut down the conversation if it's improper or if it starts to become a personal attack. And they have what we call to have decorum. They supervise decorum. At the end of the day, the Robert's Rules of Order set how you run a meeting. It's very simple, but it's a thick book. And once you understand that, I remember I was a very young councilman and I thought I knew everything. You know, I'd just been elected and, well, I had a attorney who was on the board and I made my motion and he destroyed me. I mean, politely, courteous, and just completely tore me apart. And my motion failed. I didn't understand how to appeal it. I just was done. So he was a very courteous man. Last name is Attorney Miller. And he said, hey, listen, I'm going to help you out. And it was, again, a Democrat.
He probably gauged it, that, you're new and you're trying to...
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
He gave me my baptismal by fire. And he said, look, I'm going to help you. You need to get Robert's Rules of Order. You need to read it. And then you'll learn how to, if you would, fight on the floor for what you believe in, how to make a motion, how to table a motion. If you're ever going to get elected to office, you need to read the condensed version of Robert's Rules of Order and know. What I recommend, when I was chairman of both the town council and a board of ed, first thing I told all my new members, get the book. Because if you don't, you're going to become one very frustrated person. I read that book front to back, asked people questions. Attorneys are very well versed in it. Once I learned it, I began to understand the meetings better. I understood how things should run. And more importantly, knowing the nuances allowed you sometimes to defeat something that, say, I don't like your idea. There's ways that you can maneuver things within reason, and not being unethical, but you can fight someone fairly on an evil plane.
So now this Robert's Rule, it doesn't have to be at the town level. It can be at the federal level. It's the same
It's
rule
everywhere,
across.
all the way.
It doesn't matter you're in Washington, D.C. or in a Shelton. It's the same thing.
Right. Well, there is one adaptation from that, is every organization usually will adopt what they call rules of operation. Now, most will say we adopt Robert's Rules of Order, but if you have something particular you want to do, for example, as you're watching at the national level, they're going to come out with something where you can't remove the speaker by just one call of a vote. They'll probably make it like you have to have 20 congressmen sign on. So not only do you have Robert's Rules of Order that teach you how to operate, you have your own rules of operation that you can adopt, but that's majority has to agree to it.
Oh, I see.
So there's two phases.
You can.
Yeah, you can
We
put
can
in your own
tweak.
rules.
Okay, got it.
But they should be rules that everybody could abide by.
Of course.
You can't put in the rules, everyone has to wear a black suit. That's just not reasonable.
Yeah. It has to be more meaningful when it comes to...
It's got to be reasonable.
Jim, I would love to speak on this subject. This is my favorite because I'm actually as I said, I'm a 25-year-old. I'm trying to learn the civic. And we can go and you have so much to offer.
There's so many subjects
we can go offer, but there's one thing before we end. I want to be, otherwise my 12-year-old son is not going to be happy. He asked me, can you ask what is electoral votes?
Easily.
And I think it would be if you can explain it, like what, and if that's something that I remember when I came in 99, there was a big discussion around Al Gore versus Bush, and that was something to do with the electoral votes.
With the hanging chads in Florida.
I remember that. but I didn't knew anything, but I knew there was a
It's
lingering.
confusing for people.
Yeah. So if you can walk us through why it is important and why it is so different in like from the rest of the other world, right?
Well, what we call the framers of our Constitution, and I happened to be a civic minded when I was younger and wanted to learn more about it. Bottom line is the framers of the Constitution didn't want one segment or one area with a popular vote. So let's say, for example, they were afraid, in my mind, this is only my opinion, that, one area, as we saw, it would be one party driven. They wanted to make sure that when they took a vote, that everybody was equal based off of population. Didn't care what party you were. So they weighed the votes. And what the Electoral College is very simply, like for Connecticut, we have 7, we're a smaller state, we have 7 electoral votes. So if some states split that vote, now let's say Connecticut, you get all of them. You win Connecticut, you get all 7 votes. And what it is there's people selected on both sides of the party. Matter of fact, one of my friends got selected on a Republican. Republicans did not win the state. So 7 people from Connecticut will go down to Washington, D.C., to the Electoral College, and they will cast, and it's public knowledge who they are, and they will cast the 7 votes that they have for Kamala Harris because she won our state and she deserves those votes. So this way, a popular vote, if you would, it doesn't change the scope of the country. It would be my answer.
So from a layman perspective, let's say if the Connecticut state have 7 electoral votes,
Yes.
right? And in that capacity, if for say example, if the Connecticut vote count happens to be, let's say I'm just making a number, 1 million, out of which the majority went towards the Republican. So all those 7 electoral votes, which are a part of the state
Must vote for that person.
for that person, irrespective of what party they are.
Correct. Now, when we send people down to the Electoral College because they don't want, Democrats have chosen who they want, Republicans have chosen who they want. So let's say, for example, Texas went Republican. I think they have 40 odd votes. I think it's 42 or 45. I'm not sure about that. All those votes will when they go down or go to Washington, will be cast for Donald Trump. The 7 votes that come down will be Democrats in the same area, and they'll have to cast their votes for Kamala Harris.
I see. So when
They should.
They should. At the night of the election, when they say that, this is the vote goes to that, that's based on the
Popular vote.
popular votes.
So that
but
popular
then
vote.
actually somebody has to stamp it, and when they go to the Washington
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State. Okay, and that happens close to
Before happened in December.
December.
Right.
So that's when officially you stamp and you say. So even though we say there is an elect president, things could change. Does it ever happen?
I don't know, to my knowledge, I don't think it ever has. I have heard that people have switched their vote. I have not studied that hard. I'm sure it's happened. I don't think it's proper. I think they have the right to do that, but I think they could probably recall that elector.
I see.
Bottom line is, do you really want to go against the will of the people from your state?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
And remember, too, both parties select somebody, and you need 270 electoral votes. It's a lot easier than the popular vote. And we still count the popular vote, too.
Wow.
But it doesn't count. Just in your state, it counts.
It counts. And what happened during 99 when the Al Gore versus Bush? What was that episode?
They were neck and neck. And
so neck and neck of what?
With the election.
Okay.
Because there is a possible you could have a tie.
Okay.
That is a possible.
Okay.
Now, they were close, and he needed to win Florida. Either one, if whoever took Florida would win the election.
Yes, I remember his brother was the governor, right? Okay.
But the governor only has certain powers. You can't overrule an election or Secretary of State's decisions. And what happened is that they had to go in and do all those massive recounts because they had paper ballots, and you couldn't tell who they actually picked because you had to poke it out. Terrible system. I mean, the one we've got now where you fill in the dots and you put it in a machine is a much better, quicker system. At the end of the day, George Bush was the winner of that election and got those. I think it was 11 electoral votes.
I think so,
Yeah,
around that.
it could be more.
I don't recall. I was fairly new to this.
We'll have to Google it.
Yeah, we'll have to Google it. But Mr. Jim, this is amazing. I feel like I have just gone through a civic lesson, and I just scratched the surface. And this
Just
is
my opinion, how I see things.
it's
I could be wrong on anything.
which is absolutely okay. I think we all are learning.
Yes, sir.
And I think I am I would love to have you again one of these days to even understand more than what we have discussed, because I think audience will benefit from this. And mostly I think, as I was telling you earlier off the script, that this I'm trying to make this more of for the kids. I
Yeah.
want them to understand how this process works. So if somebody is listening and if they are inspired for how this works, because most of the time people want to, but they don't know how.
You had asked me that. That was one question you wanted to talk about.
Yes,
if you remember.
yes,
How
yes.
does a person get involved?
Yes.
If you want to get involved, what you really should do is, first find out who you idealize with,
Of course.
whether it be a Democrat, Republican, and you want to get involved, or independent, Green Party, Libertarian. There's so many other small parties, working families. Pick people that you identify with. Then go seek out the local party chairman, and then they'll help you get involved. They'll say, okay, you want to be a Republican? Great. Happy to have you. What would you like to do? Some people say, well, I want to help out party and help people get elected. Some people say, I really like to run. I care about my schools. I want to be on the Board of Ed. Somebody may say, I really care about how our land's going. I want to be on land use, zoning Board of Appeals. Find out what interests you and then get involved. And the local party will help you get involved, talking to them. They're your neighbors. They're not bad people. It's just that, a lot of times people say, oh, politics can be ugly. Sure, it can be. But if you want to get involved, find that local party chairman, get your registration in for whatever party it is, and then start helping. And this is what I always tell people. You really want to get involved in politics? You really want to make a difference? Find somebody you believe in. When you find that person, help them. How do you help them? Well, you put up signs. You make phone calls. You do literature drops where you take literature, drop people's house. You fundraise for them. Whatever needs to be done. You might want to go to a campaign rally. Whatever it is for that campaign, you truly want to get involved, help that person. Because I hear so many people, not kids, but say, oh, I can't stand politics. Or I can't stand that person that's elected. Well, what are you doing to change it? Stop complaining and get out there and get involved. And you don't have to give your entire life away. I've had people when I was running that just said, Jim, I want to be in the background. I want to lick envelopes. Stuff envelopes and do mailers. Okay. I've had people that say, I really don't like that. I like to be outside. Can I put up signs for you? Great. You take any help you can, but be a part and help somebody. Be part of the solution. Get involved. Because guess what? It's your town. It's your country. And if you sit on the sidelines, you're going to get and you don't get out there besides voting, then you're going to get the government you want or don't want. But if you get involved, you're good possibility going to get the government.
And I think this is the message I want from this episode to go out to the youngsters, because the youngsters perhaps wants to, but they don't know how. And I think this may help.
Simple phone call. The other one they call is the Register of Voters. The Register of Voters in any town will know who the party chairman is.
Okay.
And sometimes, like, for example, in Stratford, the party chairman is also the Register of Voters. They're there to help you. They want to hear from you. They want to hear you want to get involved. A guy walks in and says, hey, I'm Lucky Singh, and I'd like to get involved more with my party. The first thing, are you Republican, Democrat, what are you? And you say, hey, I'm X. Okay. Well, here, call this guy right here, and he'll start talking to you. And that's how you start.
That's how you start. That's,
Yeah, not texting, call.
Call. I think that's that's my son needs to know this.
Yeah, they all do. Mine too.
He doesn't wants to talk over the phone.
No.
And when he talks over the phone, he doesn't. In the house, he's very well respected. So very respected. When I talk on the phone, yes. No hi, hello, nothing. Yes.
Yep.
I said, can you be a little nice and kind
Say hello.
or say hello? And I don't think he's showing out of a disrespect. He's just, this is the norm for them because
is the
they
norm.
just say, can you text me?
And the funny part is, you'll call someone today and they'll say, "Why didn't you just text me?" And I'm like,
Yeah, it's funny. But anyway, Mr. Jim, thank you so much.
"Anytime, my friend."
What is that one last end note would you like to tell people? Like, what is that one thing you would like people to know that they should catch from this episode? Like, what is that they should take home and say, I think this makes a difference and I'm going to go out and contribute myself in any way I can?
I would probably say that, your life is short. And before you know it, you're going to close your eyes for one last time. And when you do that, what type of difference do you want to make? Do you want to make a change? How do you want to be seen? You don't get to take money when you go. All your worldly possessions are gone, and whatever religion you may be, obviously, keep your faith. But more importantly, what mark do you want to leave on this world when you go? Do you want to be a person that has done bad things or good things, or do you want to be a person that has made the world a little bit better from where you found it? That's what I believe. Maybe I'm a little bit of a Don Quixote.
That was the best response I could get. Thank you so much. This is very profound.
Thank you.
What is one piece of advice would you like to give it to this episode? What can we do something different? I know that we are babies. We are still learning. I'm still trying to understand and trying to see how we can make a difference. And I try to ask this to everyone who's on the show, that what can we change from your experience, what you had, that could make it a better place for the next time?
Go live and have people ask questions.
Okay.
So that way they're watching. You announce it ahead of time. You have whoever the person coming in, give all their, out to their friends, family, or whatever. I know you're going to many different genres. So, for example, like my daughter does, as I was telling you, they're YouTube content creators. You want them or someone like that to put that out in their social media, but have questions from the public, because what we think may be important, or what you may, John Q. Public may want to talk about, hey, what do you know about the federal election? Hey, what do you know in this genre that we're talking about? Or it could be if you have somebody on here with their dog, hey, what's your dog eat? But having that interaction, because right now it's you and I, someone watching it. But what a way to get more people involved is say, hey, we're going to interview for a while, then we're going to stop and do a question and answer period. And then you could segue that into others.
That's a very good advice. I'm going to keep on.
I only charge a minimal fee for that.
Yeah, not more than that. Please don't. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucky.
I cannot tell you how much thankful and grateful I am. I'm so grateful.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, pal.
Thank you.